Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady, where in today's episode, an impatient Karen gets shut down and embarrassed after berating an employee. Guys, grab a drink, kick your feet up, and get ready for some good laughs today because I don't think you'll be shaking your heads in this one. The stories are a little bit more tame, and hey, you might even need a tissue. Subscribe if you haven't, and we're diving in. So I work in emergency services as an EMT. Our station is in the same building that the county keeps its 911 dispatch center. On nights when things are slow for us downstairs, I'll often do a food and coffee run to the local Flying Goose convenience store. For the folks upstairs who are pounding phones and working the radios, a caffeinated dispatcher is a happy dispatcher. The folks at the shop know me since they see me almost on a nightly basis. And since they know what I do and who the stuff is for, they grant me a little more leeway than standard customers. Nothing crazy. Stuff like making coffee or grabbing cups and supplies from the cupboards if they're out and things are busy. Little things that save us both time because they can keep doing what they're doing and I can get back out the door. On this night, me and my partner stop to put gas in the ambulance, and I run inside to get everybody's food, and I find they're out of coffee. No big deal, there's a large cluster of people waiting around the food counter. So instead of bothering the employees, I just get to work starting a few pots. I'm in a dark navy blue shirt with medic across the back, with my squad number and logo on the front, and I'm wearing my portable radio. I definitely don't look anything like the store crew in their bright neon store shirts when this happens. Out of nowhere, a Karen says, "Excuse me, but why aren't you making my sandwich?" I turn and look at her saying, "Excuse me?" She says, "Don't look at me like that. I've been standing here for 20 minutes while you were on break, and now you're gonna hide over here instead of making my food?" At this point, I just laugh and say, "You can't be serious right now." Karen gets shrill and she says, "You think it's funny? Well, we'll see who's laughing when I report you to your manager and get you fired." I tell her, "You go right ahead and call him and tell him that I'm refusing to make your sandwich. His phone number is 911. At this point, she just starts sputtering as I turn my back to her and go to the touchscreen to order the food. Other customers as well as the actual employees are laughing now as she starts trying to find someone to agree with her that I'm wrong, because I was making coffee, so how was she to know? She then grabs the next order that was called, not even hers, and she storms out in embarrassment. When I got back outside, I told my partner, and he laughed so hard the rig was shaking. He told me some crazy lady had come out, scowled at him across the parking lot, and yelled at him, "I hope you never come to my house." And now he understood why. Typical Karen, right? Always having to get the last word in. Honestly, I do hope they never come to her house either, because as much as we love to poke fun at Karens here, at the end of the day, an ambulance at your house is never a good thing, right? So this is an old story from about 20 or so years ago. I stopped at Costco on my way home from work. I just came in looking for some electronics or whatnot, so I wasn't pushing a cart. And while in the electronics section, this older lady sees me looking over some item, and I can see she's interested in an item shelved near the one I'm looking at. I don't even remember what the items were. Anyway, she turns and she asks me some very specific questions about the item she's looking at. I look up at her and simply answered, "Sorry, I have no idea." A few minutes later, on the other end of the same aisle, the same lady comes up to me with another item in her hands. And she asked me, "Do you know blah 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 about this?" Again, it was another item I had no idea about. And at this point, I'm mildly annoyed, so I just answered, "Nope," and turned to go browse the next aisle over. It's worthwhile, I think, at this point in the story to explain that I was working in a fairly stressful job. And one of the reasons I'd even stopped at Costco was that my 12-mile ride home was mired in terrible traffic. And rather than spend the next 30 minutes trying to go 6 miles, I pull into the Costco figuring I'd do a little shopping and let the traffic clear out while I did so. So I started this whole experience wound a little tightly. On top of that, this was when I was in my early 30s or late 20s, and I was a pretty big D-bag back then. I've mellowed since, and partly due to this experience. Anyway, moving on. 5 minutes later, I'm nerding out to whatever thing I was looking at in the next aisle, and the same woman comes around the corner from the other aisle where I'd left her, specifically walking past other customers to come to me to ask a third question about something that I had no idea about. By now, I'm pretty annoyed. It's clear to me that she's not flirting or anything like that, and I cannot for the life of me understand why she keeps coming to bug me about these things, when all I want to do is waste a few minutes out of traffic. In all honesty, if I had any answers for her, I would have likely given them to her, but I didn't have those answers. In reply to her question, I give her a crappy look. And in a very condescending voice I said, "I have no idea, but maybe you ought to ask someone who works here." I then make an overly dramatic gesture with my hands pointing towards one of the employees 20 feet away. The woman then looks at me, somewhat offended, but she didn't say another word, and I didn't give a damn. I'm thinking, why couldn't this woman just leave me alone? I left the electronics section and wandered off. And after another 20 minutes or so of walking around and avoiding traffic, I picked up some grocery items and walked to the cashier line to pay for it. As my turn came up to pay, I pull out my wallet looking for my membership card, and couldn't find it. I knew I had to show it to get into the store, and quickly checked all my pants pockets and found no card. The cashier then smiles at me and she points to my chest. I looked where she was pointing, and in a split second, I realized that I was a giant a-hole. So, my employer had access control in all buildings, and you scanned your employee ID card at the door of these buildings to enter. Employees were also obligated to display their IDs at all times while on work property. Many people wore the badge attached to one of these retractable cords that you clip to your belt. Some wore their badge on a loop of a ribbon around their neck, and others, like myself, wore their badge in a transparent pouch that was designed to go clip onto a shirt or jacket pocket. My employer also required business attire, so on my way home from work, I was dressed in leather-soled shoes, pleated dress pants, a white button-down shirt, and a tie. Apparently, I also left my work ID badge holder still clipped to my shirt pocket. At that point in time, I'd go in and out of buildings over a dozen or more times on any given day. After a year or so, it had become a well-practiced and unthinking motion for me to grab my work ID from my badge holder, flash it to the door sensor, and just slip it back into the pocket on the holder as I entered the building. Now, apparently when I pulled my Costco ID out of my wallet to get into the store, I unthinkingly placed it into the badge holder, since I'd forgotten to take that off and leave it in my car with my jacket, instead of back into my wallet. I had been walking around the store looking like a manager, with a badge displaying the Costco logo prominently in bright red letters right on my chest. As all of this realization came to me after the cashier pointed out my Costco ID I was wearing, my face went a little pale, and she asked if I was okay. I mumbled something about feeling dumb, and this being a habit from work as I paid for my stuff. I then hurried out of the store, hoping I didn't see the woman who had been asking me questions. It then began to dawn on me that if I weren't such a d-bag coward, I'd go and find that woman and explain to her what happened and apologize for being so rude. Instead, I just left the store in shame, feeling about 2 inches tall. Oh, that poor lady. She probably thought OP was some stuck-up manager that was too good to help customers. If I were OP, I would have totally went to go find that woman. Like, unless she happens to frequent Reddit or she hears this story, she's still out there thinking about that one time a useless stuck-up Costco employee who didn't know a damn thing refused to help her 3 times. This story happened a few months ago during the holiday season. Now, the holidays are stressful, I get that. Even without the supply chain issues that have been happening all over the world, getting that perfect gift for your loved ones can be difficult. Sometimes, though, a little patience and a kind word can soothe the insanity, which is how I found myself yesterday. I had the day off from my retail job. Having already done my shopping and wrapping, I decided to treat myself to a movie. Our local theater closed during the pandemic, so the only option is about 20 minutes away in one of those pre-planned shopping villages. Along with the movie theater, there's restaurants, retail establishments, and a good-sized bookstore. I had some time to kill before my show, so I'm at this bookstore, dodging the mad rush of people trying to get those last-minute purchases. I'm in the history section, seeing if there's any good World War II books I don't have, and I notice that one of the tables is just a mess. No issues, so I start straightening up, sorting the books, and helping my fellow retail employees. Now, I'm wearing a wool coat and a flat cap, and a mask. Nothing that makes me look like I work there. But since I've made the mistake of cleaning something, I'm now a target. All of a sudden, I hear, "Hey!" I then turn to have a smartphone shoved into my face, and my eyes crossed. And she says, "You, help me find this." I say, "Whoa," and take a step back, and there's a very anxious lady gesticulating with the phone wildly, saying, "I need this now." I say to her, "Slow down, what's wrong?" She keeps screaming at me saying, "I said, help me find this, now." I can tell she's stressed out. She might look like a typical Karen, but I don't know her story. I then say to her, I don't work here, and before you say a word, I was straightening up that table because I felt like it. Now let's try this again. What are you looking for? The woman is still frantic and she says, what do you mean? You don't... I then cut her off and say, I mean exactly what I just said. I do not work here. But what are you looking for? The woman then deflates and she's on the verge of tears and she says, I need this for my kids. She then holds up her phone. On the screen is Betrayal at the House on the Hill. A good game. She says to me, I can't find it. My daughter just wants this, and I can't find anything in this stupid store. I then say to her, I know where that is. Take a moment, breathe, it's gonna be okay. Now I can tell she's just stressed to hell and back, and she's just saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. She then tells me that she recently lost her mom, and she couldn't even go to the funeral due to the pandemic. The woman's trying not to sob as I guide her to the games. The spot for Betrayal is empty, but I find another copy in another spot before she has another meltdown. And I say, okay, here you go. Anything else you need help with? She's holding the box in her hands, fingers nearly crushing the edges, and she asked, why did you help me? I was being such a bitch. I then responded, because you needed help. Merry Christmas. She then gave me a grateful smile and went to pay. And no, I didn't get a pay it forward, I didn't get a free coffee, I didn't get a thank you from the employees, but that smile, to help a fellow human being in a stressful time, was definitely worth it. I love how Opie handled the situation. Instead of escalating it into something unnecessary, Opie took their time, calmed down the woman, and in the end, she walked away with no managers called, nobody threatening anyone's job, and most importantly, no police guys, because you and I know how fast these things can go from 0 to 911. So back in the before times, pre-COVID, I went to a department store to pick up some outfits for a friend's wedding. Now I say outfits plural because in my friend's culture, weddings take place over several days with many different events. I was picking out at least 3 dresses with matching jackets and shawl options as I wasn't sure what would look good while being considered appropriate and modest. I was too nervous to wear a sari as I've never worn one before, and even though they're beautiful, I have no idea how to put it on and take it off. It's not something I would have wanted to bother the bride or her family with during the wedding. I must have been carrying 9 or 10 items around the store with pretty much my entire body blocked by a huge pile of clothes I was gonna try on. I had come straight from work, so I was wearing a white button-down shirt and plain black trousers. And with a giant pile of clothes, it wouldn't be immediately apparent that I wasn't wearing a lanyard, and obviously didn't work there. As I was headed toward the fitting rooms, an older lady, maybe in her 70s or 80s, walked up to me, and she asked where she could find one of the jackets I was carrying. At this point, I'd wandered through so many departments of the store that I couldn't remember what area I picked it up from. I politely explained that I didn't work in the store and I was just choosing items for a friend's wedding. The lady was so sweet when she realized I didn't work there, and she profusely apologized for bothering me. She then gets a bit teary and said how much she loved weddings. She even offered to say a prayer for my friend and her future husband, and to wish them a long and happy life together. She even told me which of the dresses I'd picked up that she thought would look best on me. Sometimes I think about that sweet lady, and I hope she gets to attend many more weddings and joyous events in her future. There was no shouting, no Karens, no drama, just a lovely older lady, and me, carrying a comically large pile of clothes. I was with my sister at a large store several years ago. I was thinking it was Walmart, but it might have been Target. First off, my sister is a sweetheart. She's one of the most loving people you'll ever meet. She loves everyone. If you're a good person and do good things, she'll appreciate you. She also doesn't curse or raise her voice ever. However, she also doesn't like or appreciate people mistreating others or injustices. She always speaks out. On this day, we were in line, and it's a busy night, and we were several people back. In true sister fashion, she remembered things when we were in line, and she sent me off to go get them. I ran to get them, and upon my return, I heard the tail end of a heated discussion, which led to everybody clapping and my sister standing at the front of the line, angrily glaring at this one guy 3 people back. If I remember correctly, we were 5 people back, so 2 people behind him. So apparently while I was gone, the cashier had to price check something and was taking a bit longer. The cashier was a very sweet young man that had Down syndrome. I don't think it was the cashier's fault things were slow. It was a busy spurt, and according to my sister, it was a series of events that caused things to slow down on the register. Anyway, the man 3 customers back was super pissed that things were taking slow, and he decided that his time was more important than being a decent human being. He angrily muttered things under his breath, and after the second price check, he starts yelling, "Come on, you've got to be kidding me. Can we get a real employee to check us out? Get this R word out of here." According to the woman in front of him, that's when my sister had enough. She left our cart in line and she marches over to the employee and stood next to him behind the conveyor belt. She then looked at the employee and told him, "Hey, you're perfect. Don't let mean people try to tell you otherwise." Then she glared at the man, raising her voice to be heard. He was still yelling at her saying, "Hey, he doesn't need any other reason to be slow." She then looked at the man and bluntly told him, "How dare you talk to someone like that? No one deserves to be talked like that. Also, I hate that word you used, and the only one acting like that is you." The man then said something about how my sister can't talk to him like that as he's a customer. To which my sister told him, "I don't work here, and I don't know him. What I do know is that you have a poor attitude, and you should think about how you talk to people, as you don't want to be that guy." Now, I could hear the "I don't work here" as I came back, and ended up running past everybody, seeing my sister standing by the employee with her hand on his back. I ran past everybody and stood at the end of the conveyor belt, mostly because I wanted to be in between the man and my sister. Everybody starts clapping by this point, and we were all staring at him. Some guy that was behind us was cheering on my sister, and he said, "Dude, don't be an idiot, just shut up." No one moved or said anything else, so my sister continued and said, "Well, as I see it, you have two choices. You can leave and go somewhere else, or you can shut your mouth." At this point, a manager comes up and stood next to me. He looks at the entire line, and everybody was dead quiet, waiting to see what the man would do. The manager asked, "Is everything okay here?" My sister said, "This man here was verbally abusing your employee." The manager looks pissed, but the guy was already properly shamed for his attitude, and he was looking down, not saying anything. My sister looked at the employee, asking him if he was okay or if he needed a break. The manager was a little slow, but he backed up the brake and even offered to take over his lane. The employee said that he wanted one, but he wanted to clear his lane first. My sister refused to leave aside, and I refused to move as I wanted to stay between the angry guy and my sister. The manager stood next to me and took over bagging. The guy went through the line quietly, paid and left, and refused to look at anybody in their eyes. After he went through, my sister waved the guy that was behind us to go through, so we would be last. After we finished paying, the employee came around and gave her the biggest hug, and he thanked her. He had tears in his eyes. He told her that happened often, and this was the first time anybody's ever stood up for him. He also explained that this is why he rarely helps out on the register unless it's late at night. He's usually stocking shelves or in the back, where there's less interaction. My sister told him to always remember, if people are mean, that it's not his fault or his problem, it's their problem. After that, he left to go on break, while another woman stayed to talk to us, and she even offered to buy our items. My sister refused the offer, but happily talked to her while they filled me in. The manager came out a few minutes later and gave us coupons and a gift card. She took the coupons but asked if he would give the gift card to the employee. Honestly, I'm surprised the angry man even stayed and checked out. I hope he thinks about how he talks to people in the future. Guys, OP is my freaking hero. And what a beautiful outcome to something so disgusting, like way to shut down that idiot. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, see, not all stories have to involve psycho Karens going to jail, right? Even though those stories are pretty fun. If you guys missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. OP refuses to let a Karen cut in line, and she goes absolutely bonkers. Check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.